And now to Eddie Aruza and what Chicago businesses are being told about getting ready for the NATO and G8 summits. Eddie.
Phil, hundreds of Chicago business leaders got a lesson in protest preparedness last night, and some of what they were told sounds like preparations for war. Security experts advise downtown businesses to have, among other things, evacuation plans, designated safe rooms, and even procedures for moving their business operations to a different location. All of this and much more in anticipation of what could be tens of thousands of G8 and NATO summit protesters coming to Chicago in May. Social media and YouTube are already rallying demonstrators, and here is what one group has posted on YouTube.
Citizens of the Internet, we are anonymous. May 1st, we will flock to Chicago to occupy during the concurrent NATO and G8 summits. We will set up tents, barricades, kitchens, and peacefully occupy Chicago for 1 month. Adbusters has put out a call for 50,000 people to come to Chicago to occupy. Join us on May 1st. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
With us tonight are two of the security experts who briefed business leaders last night, and they are Hillard Heintze, Chief Executive Officer of Hillard Heintze. That's a security consulting firm co-founded by Mr. Heintze and former Chicago Police Superintendent Terry Hillard. And Jeffrey Kramer, Managing Director of the Chicago office of Kroll's Business Intelligence and Investigations, which also offers security consulting. Gentlemen, welcome to Chicago tonight.
Thanks so much.
Hillard Heintze, you were the moderator of that briefing to business owners and managers yesterday, and you were accompanied by representatives from the police department, from the Secret Service, from the FBI. And the message to the business community was keep calm, go about your business, but at the same time, your organization put out this pamphlet, or gave them this pamphlet, which advises them on many different issues that I've mentioned already, which sounds disconcerting, like having a safe room, having evacuation plans, having monitoring social media for emergencies. Are there two different messages, or is it disconcerting to the business community to be hearing this?
I think the way you introduced it, Eddie, is a little offset. We weren't preparing for war. We were giving information on what are best practices to prepare for a marvelous event that's coming to our city, and to consider security preparations if you haven't. And so the list that we provided are measures that organizations can consider on advancing best practices on their security perimeter, on strengthening the security post, on ensuring that their visitors and employees wear credentials to the business, and the full range of emergency preparedness steps. One of the messages we gave last night was there are many businesses in this room that will not need to do a single issue here. Some businesses may need to address a multitude of them in each category. So it was a very good program to share information. We reached out to Frank DiBenedetto, our special agent in charge of the Secret Service, Superintendent McCarthy, the FBI agent in charge, Rob Gant, and Gary Schinkel, and they hosted a marvelous event.
Jeffrey Kramer, can life go on as usual during that preceding week, or perhaps preceding 2 weeks, if there are tens of thousands of protesters and they take over Chicago?
Well, I don't think they're going to take over Chicago, and life is certainly going to go on. If you have to get to work, you're going to go to work. If you have a dentist appointment, you're going to go to that dentist appointment. I think what you want to be aware of, and what we see in talking with our clients, if you're a high-profile corporate citizen of Chicago, you're going to take certain measures. Now, some of those measures have probably already been in place because they're just good sense, but you're going to be more attuned to it now with these protesters coming in. So I think people are going to be aware, or should be aware, of where the protesters may be, depending where they're going to be allowed to protest at a given time, and just be aware of your surroundings when you're going certainly into the Loop or other areas where things may happen.
Now, Hillard Heintze, you, in your long list of impressive credentials, you were once with the Secret Service, and your company, Jeffrey, is a global enterprise. From what you have learned from past NATO and G8 summits, are there things that were done there that apply to here that will that can be implemented to try to avert any kind of disruption or violence?
Absolutely. Superintendent McCarthy last night gave a great analysis of how to deal with the demonstrators. And you know, when you look at the issues that Seattle confronted immediately following the next major collection of demonstrators in our nation's capital, Chief Ramsey dealt with that in a different fashion, much more effective. And I will tell you, in the last 10 years, our law enforcement leaders across the nation have learned those lessons and are bringing them to bear in today's
Jeffrey
issues.
Kramer, what's your biggest concern about preparedness for any potential disruption or violence with the G8 and NATO summits?
I think you do see a lot of it. I think because that point's well taken. I think law enforcement has learned over the last 10 years. The corollary of that is the protesters have also. I think you're going to see more social media now than obviously exists in Seattle. Twitter, the YouTube feed that you just showed, that didn't exist obviously 10, 12 years ago. So I think you're going to see more people here just as a function of Chicago's an easier place to get into than Seattle.
Is social media going to pose a bigger problem or challenge for law enforcement and for security officials because they can coordinate so quickly now?
It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. It's certainly easier for the protesters to determine where they're going to be at a given time. However, the flip side of that is we see with working with our clients, they're able also to monitor the websites, the YouTube videos, et cetera, who might be coming to Chicago. So it's a two-way street.
That information is public, and just like information can get to demonstrators, law enforcement is capable of monitoring that same communication. So they'll be able to stay abreast and stay on top of it.
Do you favor doing what San Francisco recently did and shutting down or at least limiting communications within the city should things get out of hand, whether it's cell phone usage or Twitter usage?
No, and you saw the problems that happened in San Francisco and Oakland and certainly in Berkeley. I don't think that's planned for here. I don't think it's advisable by any stretch of the imagination.
Both of you are advising or already on the payroll of some of the big companies here in terms of security measures. Is that correct?
Correct.
But you cannot reveal, of course, who your clients are. But what about the smaller businesses who can't afford security experts such as yourself? What sorts of preparations should they be making?
Well, I'll tell you right now, I know for a fact that there will be communications to smaller business. I've been in discussions where there is going to be some organized information sharing for these smaller businesses, and even the opportunity to have officials visit and give recommendations if business owners are concerned. And this has been a growing issue being driven in our city. We still have plenty of time to prepare for that and deal with that. And I think our city's plan is starting to unfold now as we get closer to the event.
We saw that ominous video maybe posted by the hacker group Anonymous, maybe not. We don't know who that was. They're calling for at least 50,000 protesters to come to Chicago. Is there any way that intelligence can know in advance how many protesters and what their intentions are?
Certainly not to that degree, although Anonymous did take responsibility for the recent cyber attack on the CIA's. But who knows? But can they ascertain to even an approximation? No, I don't think so.
Is there more that the city can do to try to make it accommodating for the protesters, to avert any kind of clashes or violence?
You know, Eddie, we were talking earlier, and the day I arrived in this city in 1999, one of the first messages I heard from our police leadership then, when Superintendent Hillard was running our police department, they always were attentive to protesters' right to assemble and speak their voice in a lawful manner. And they always insisted on accommodations that were fair and reasonable. And I guarantee you that will happen in this case.
You believe that Mayor Emanuel and Police Chief McCarthy will be providing the kind of access that protesters might demand or want, or at least proximity to the events?
They might not give it to the degree the protesters want. The protesters would like to be right in front of the Chancellor of Germany. They're not going to get that opportunity. It's a balancing act. They have to give them the right to protest, but they also have to make sure that the meetings go on and then people to get to where they need to go.
And they will set it up within safe zones of transportation routes, of event sites, and all of the arrangements that need to be made from a security perspective. Demonstration zones are designated based on those elements.
Now, two downtown universities, Roosevelt University and Columbia College, have already rescheduled some events that they had for this time. Columbia College has rescheduled its graduation ceremony. Roosevelt University is moving some of its classes. Do you recommend that other businesses, if they can, do anything to try to stay out of this area for the few days surrounding the event?
Well, in those situations, those were a lot of people going to one area that could be accommodated. So, arguably that makes sense.
That's a smart decision.
Well, what about people visiting downtown or workers downtown? Anything else?
The city's going to be open. Come visit. And we're still a long way out. And let's see how the city plans and prepares and the communication that will come. But I can promise you, it will be come and see and visit and enjoy yourself.
Do you guys, as security experts, have any insights yet on what the city plans to do in terms of boundaries and closing off streets yet?
I don't think those decisions have been made.
And the city with their federal partners will be very careful about closing streets. They will only close streets that are within a particular zone. Everything else will be attempted to remain open and temporary halt when motorcades are having to move forth.
What about protests that pop up perhaps just anywhere outside of these perimeters?
Well, I think that's likely to happen, because if they're not comfortable with where they're being allowed to protest, they're going to pop up somewhere where perhaps law enforcement doesn't expect them at a given moment. I think what you're also going to see, which you did not see in prior G8 and NATO conferences, are the cyber attacks. We have former FBI agents who work in the cyber area, and we're seeing more and more of that with the more high-profile corporations.
And you're
obviously
also advising your clients about cyber attacks and monitoring social media, isn't that right?
Absolutely.
What are you advising them to do?
Well, for monitoring, there's a lot of corporations that are public in nature that already know some of the groups that target them. And if you go on, you can find some of the people that maybe are saying we should go to a certain company at a certain time, and you know they're out there, so you're monitoring them. It goes back to what we were talking about before, with information out there really serves both purposes, the protesters and law enforcement.
And those are issues that both of our firms can help clients with, is how to understand that issue about monitoring social media and best steps to gather. So.
Hillard Heintze and Jeffrey Kramer, I'm sure we'll be talking to you again before and perhaps during the NATO summits. Thank you very much for being here tonight.